It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their nonlinear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find the link for in the show notes. Today, my guest is Kim Muench. Kim is a Jai Institute for Parenting Certified Conscious Parenting Coach and the founder of Real Life Parent Guide, who specializes in working with parents of emerging adults ages 18 to 29. Kim is passionate about educating, supporting, and encouraging her clients to parent with intention and guidance rather than fear and control. Kim's 3+ decades raising 5 now adult children and years of coaching other parents empowers her to lead her clients with compassion and without judgment into healthier, happier, more functional relationships. Kim has a self-published Amazon #1 release in the parent and adult-child relationships category called Becoming Me While Raising You: A Mother's Journey to Herself. She's working on a new book entitled Lost in Place, a guide forward for emerging adults and their parents. Her mission is to spread the movement to parent with rather than over our children. Let's not wait any longer. Here's Kim. All right. Hi, Kim. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Joanna, I'm excited to be here and talk with you about my favorite topic.
First, let's jump into, I want the guests to hear just a little bit about your personal journey. And then obviously we're going to dive into like parenting in general. And so we're going to get to you being able to talk about the work that you're doing. But before we even get to that place, tell the listeners, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were getting about what you were supposed to do after high school?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and went to a all-girls Catholic high school. And the message that I got was to go on to college and then get a great job and then get married and then have children. That was the message I got.
Is that just like a Midwest thing, or do you think that's just like in general, that's what we like, you know, with our heads in the sand, that's the linear path that we're all like spoon fed about how life is supposed to play out?
I think we have been spoon fed that for decades. Maybe it's a Midwest thing, but I'm pretty sure it's probably all over the world that these are the steps you're supposed to take.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you end up doing?
Well, I graduated from high school and then went to my freshman year in college. And by Christmas, I was pregnant. So I finished my freshman year in college and then came home for a couple of months. My child was due in August. I ended up getting a nannying job because I didn't want to be seen out in public, because even back in 1987, it was not overly accepted. I ended up having to move out of our family home because my dad said, it's not going to go for you to stay here if you're going to keep this baby. So I ended up finding out about welfare benefits and applying very, very pregnant and moving out on $360 and food stamps. So I moved into a tiny apartment. I didn't have a car. I had my son. I was very, happy single mom. His dad was involved in our life, but it was a difficult time in my life. So I've strayed very far from what I was told at that all-girls Catholic high school.
Well, and I think, this is when we say, like, we don't have crystal balls. We don't know what our future actually holds. And we have decisions, every day is a choice, and we make the choices that we make, and it leads us on the path that we're on. So now all of a sudden you're a mom earlier than you thought you were going to be.
Yes. Yes. And I wouldn't change a thing about it, but it was very challenging to become a mom at 18 and, not be able to, or, have to figure out adulting and becoming a mom all at the same time. So it was definitely a lot. I think it's contributed to the woman that I am at this point in my life. But it was not easy for sure.
So lead us through then how, like, here's the bookends, that part of your story and what you're doing now, which I'm going to leave a mystery so we can eventually get to it. What was the in-between? How did we get from there as an 18-year-old new mom to life today?
So the first couple of years I was with my oldest son's dad. So I had a boy and we were together the first couple of years of his life, but it was a very emotionally abusive relationship that began to get physically abusive. So I knew I needed to get myself out of the relationship. I had never seen him be anything but a wonderful dad to his son. So of course we went, I broke up with him and we went through court proceedings to, divide up the time and the money and all that stuff. I never married him, but of course we still had to go through that procedure. So shortly thereafter, I started dating a family friend that I had known for my entire life. And very quickly we ended up falling in love and getting married within a year of starting to date. He is still my husband to this day. So we're married 33 years and together we have 4 children. So I have my oldest son at this point is 38 and then they're 32, 27, 22, and then my only daughter is 20. So I have been in this parenting gig for a long, long time. That being said, one of the second greatest challenges that I have lived through is when my oldest son was 20, he was struggling with an addiction to alcohol to cope with his mental health issues. He was quite depressed and anxious and had OCD. So that was another real major learning experience in my life, trying to walk alongside of my son through his addiction to hopefully help him, find sobriety. So that was another big contributor, I think, to the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah. Fortunately,
he is more than 15 years sober from alcohol and still does struggle quite a bit with his mental health, but he is sober. Mm-hmm. And I finally went back to college because I remember I left after freshman year. So after he started to go on his sober journey, I decided I wanted to go back to college, and my intention was to become a licensed chemical dependency counselor and work with teenagers. I felt that is why I had walked through this journey with my son.
Yeah.
So I finished my psychology, bachelor's in psychology. I passed the state of Texas exam to become an LCDC, then started on my 4,000 internship hours. 1,000 hours into it, I decided working with teenagers who didn't think they had a drug problem was not where I was called. I loved the part of my internship that I loved was working with the parents in the support group. So along the magic lines of that, the idea of parent coaching came into my sphere, my world. Mm-hmm. And so I investigated that, ended up becoming certified as a parent coach in 2016. And since that time, I have worked with parents of adolescents, helping them with more minor issues that go along with parenting teenagers, and then some really major issues, which is what I focus on now. Those parents of emerging adults 18 to 25 who are failing to move forward into adulthood due to mental health and substance use issues.
Which is 100% the same population that I serve. I just happen to be kind of on the working with the young adult side of things. So I am salivating at the thought of this conversation and you kind of like talking about working with parents specifically with this emerging adult population. So, okay, we heard this. Is that the role that you are in now? And that's kind of like solely the work that you're doing?
That is solely the work that I'm doing. And there is a lot of work.
Yeah. I should have refrained from making that sound like that's like the only thing they're doing. Like it's moving mountains. That's what that work entails. Okay, so having heard all of that and kind of leading to the work that you're doing, and we'll talk more too about kind of the actual like context, right? Some of the actual topics and how to support parents. But just for the sake of this podcast, hearing your journey leading to where you are now, do you see yourself as successful?
I do. It's taken a long time and a lot of effort. And I did not go into this with the intention of becoming a coach I really could have used back in 2008. I mean, I really have become the coach I desperately needed back then. But because I went into coaching parents of like middle school and high school students, because I didn't want people to get to the place where I was when my son was 20. I wanted to proactively help parents. The problem is parents will work very hard to make sure that their students or their children are supported in tutors, in special coaches, they will invest money into their kids, but they will not invest into themselves. And so I felt like I was like banging my head against the wall. And through the magic of TikTok and Instagram, a friend said, "You're so good on video, Kim. Why don't you start by sharing your story on social media?" So I did. And as a result of that, ever since that time, these 8 parents of 18 and older, parents of 8, like just keep coming. And it's amazing. I love the work that I do, but it is also really daunting to think of how many challenges we have with 18 to 30-year-olds.
Yeah. What would you say, just like for anybody that's listening, because the majority of the audience are parents of young adults, I'm just, maybe in an effort to normalize or validate maybe some of the experiences they have. What are some of the themes that you see pop up nowadays when parents are reaching out because of their young adult not thriving?
Mm-hmm. Sleeps all day, games all night, smokes a lot of weed, underemployed, if employed at all, no desire, feeling hopeless about the future and whether or not they'll ever get married or have, they've essentially given up before they've even started. And I think one of the factors that a lot of parents come to me with is COVID. And so I would say, like, I know that myself, and I wouldn't blame this 100% on COVID. Yeah. I think there's multiple factors, 2 very big ones that I hear all the time. One, lockdown, because these kids at the stage that I'm working with now were freshmen in high school through senior in college when we went into lockdown. And I know that because I had 2 kids in that very realm. So it's COVID and it's screen time. The amount of screen time is, I think we knew as parents, we should be aware of this. We should really monitor this. But now we have overwhelming evidence. The messaging that some young people are getting through social media and the escapism through gaming is compounding the issue of not wanting to move ahead in life and feeling hopeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's some of the conversations I feel like I've had lately too, is just like your dopamine is flooded from constantly like, hitting anything, whether it's just like doom scrolling on your phone or gaming. At the end of the day, it's just like you also just can't function. Even if you wanted to function, you can't function. So I imagine that there's a lot of parents that like want to help their young adult, but are also feeling pretty powerless in the moment. And like you said, now I'm starting to lose hope about their future because I can't get them to move.
Right. And I mean, and it's a delicate balance of trying to maintain, if not build, a better relationship between young people and their parents, while also setting some very healthy and needed boundaries that need to be set. Yeah. And if parents haven't been good at that in the past, and all of a sudden now they have a late teen or 20 something, and they're feeling like, can I set boundaries? Like and here's the biggest question I get, which I find somewhat triggering. And that is, what's the consequence? What's the consequence if he doesn't do it? What's the consequence? And I want to, I get it, because we were taught to parent that every action has a consequence. Yeah. And consequence meaning punishment of some sort. Yeah. And you get a 22, 23, 25, 28-year-old individual living at home, not moving forward in their lives. You don't want to continue to pay for their entire life. You never thought you'd be in this position, and yet you can't make them do something.
Yeah, I imagine that there are parents that will hear this and will immediately be just completely triggered by that statement and the process that you kind of listed after the fact, like, yeah, that's my life. So what do we do? What do we do? That's probably why they're like listening to this anyways, right? Like I need reassurance that life isn't linear. Maybe my child at some point will eventually get a degree, or if they don't, that's totally okay, as long as they're self-sufficient or financially independent or like okay, right? I just want my kid to be okay. Obviously, I want to make sure that we're keeping the majority of the cards that you hold close to your chest. But what's one piece of like advice that you can give to a parent right now that's listening, that's really like at a true loss?
Yeah, you have to focus on the three things that you do actually control. Thing number one is how you're showing up in the relationship. Thing number two is what you are willing to provide at this point in their lives, if they're over the age of 18. And number three, how you're responding to their words and actions. So when I'm working with parents, this is what we focus on. These are the things that you control. You have to stop trying to control their behavior, because all you're going to do is, get embroiled in power struggle after power struggle, or sometimes young people are just completely isolating and shutting down. So parents, again, they want to get their kid to go to the therapist, get a job, all the things that they want them to do. And you have to reframe and shift how you approach it so that it's about me. So I work with parents on them. How am I showing up? What does my tone of voice sound like? Am I someone who is a safe place for them to be able to talk to? Have I been? Is there a trust issue in the relationship? How could we work on that? Sometimes before setting healthy boundaries, we have to work on the connection, and that can take time, because over time, they didn't get here overnight. So over time, they have to be able to rebuild the relationship in small moments.
Yeah. As you were talking, literally flashing through my head, a lot of these clients I work with over the years, where a lot of it is just that. Like, we can't expect immediate results or changes because it has been years in the making, the situation that we're in. So it's going to take, like, this can't be a sprint. This is very much a marathon in terms of like the untangling to be able to, like you said, reestablish that connection before we can even jump into the topic of like boundaries or transitioning out of the house. Like, that is just, we have to be realistic about this, like the actual status of the situation in this moment and how long it's going to take for this like exit strategy, transition plan, whatever you want to call it.
Right. And I do a lot of talking with parents about what is your son or daughter capable of? Like, based on history, based on their day-to-day right now. And, that's where you start, because you can't say to a young person, you need to have a job by next week or you're out of the house, if the core issue with them is their mental health and they're in such a bad position mentally that the idea or the thought of even putting themselves together enough to get a job is just not there.
Yeah. I'm working with more and more families too that have a neurodiverse young adult. And I do feel like that's compounding some of if the parent themselves is neurotypical, struggling to actually just understand autism or ADHD, or, like, it's more so autism than ADHD, but regardless, understanding how your child is just differently wired anyways, and then factoring that into like the expectations around what your child even is capable of. I'm curious, from the parent coaching perspective, how do you support parents differently that have a neurodiverse child?
Well, first and foremost, I'm going to tell them that I cannot be an expert on everything that's out there. I work with a lot of parents who have ADHD, ADD, ODD, OCD, borderline personality, on the spectrum. I am not an expert in those things. So the first thing I do is really ask parents to educate themselves on the particular diagnosis that their kid has. I read a lot myself, but I cannot possibly know all of it. I would consider myself an expert on parenting and parenting this age group.
Mm-hmm.
So I need them to partner with me, which is what the coaching is really all about, is to partner with, like, based on the knowledge that you have about your son or daughter's diagnosis, their everyday life, what small step can we take? What small step can the parent take back? Because generally they've been advocating for their son or daughter for a lot of years, sometimes through school and stuff like that. And they just they're afraid to take a step back, and they're doing way too much.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes complete sense. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you loud and clear is that your approach to the work that you do, it's not about the perceived like priority family member that the parent, like, we're not getting help for the young adult. We're getting help for the parents to be able to like better support themselves, to then show up differently for their child, who we are naming is struggling in some capacity. But more importantly, it's about what's in the parent's control.
Right. And I do, once in a while, I get to talk to the young person, and I love to hear their perspective. It's super helpful to me. And if I get that opportunity, I will ask them, what do you think mom and dad could do better at or be working on? So I really care about their perspective. And also maybe giving them some tips on how to talk with mom and dad more productively.
Yeah.
So I try and do a little coaching in there, because I really am. At the end of the day, my goal is for, their relationships to be better, while also healthy boundaries on both sides.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it also, the last thing I'll say, and then I want to make sure we talk about how people can even connect with you. Like, obviously you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram. I want to make sure folks know like how to actually like tap in to seeing what you're doing, and then to connect with you for coaching. But what you just said totally resonates with like the treatment space. Mental health, substance use, whatever, we have all of this stuff that we're throwing at the person who's in treatment to change. But the reality is, if we don't subtly change, like you said, tone, right? Let's just talk about tone. Sometimes tone, it doesn't matter. You could be saying some great things. The way you're saying it is triggering me. And now I'm in this emotional state, and we're not going to be able to have a productive conversation. And so I really appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your appreciation. And let me tell you, like I said, I'm happy and love the work that I do, and wasn't expecting to be in quite this niche when I started this. But it saddens me too at times that there's this level of need.
Yeah. Like you said, COVID being one of the biggest themes, I do think that even going backwards with tech and COVID, like for years, we're going to be dealing with this emerging adult population and adolescent treatment, like that adolescent support, not treatment, but this emerging adult experience is going to continue to be a real process for the young adults and the parents, based on how the pandemic and where they lived kind of derailed their development.
Yeah. And I want to say real quick that I think I'm Gen X, and, I was an anomaly in that I had my first child at 18, but for the most part, my peers were getting married at 22, 23, having their kids and whatever. And I think parents today of my age still feel that their sons and daughters should be on that same timeline, and they're not. They're choosing to have a gap year. They're choosing, or they have to take longer to get through school because of the cost. They're not getting married until later. And if they're choosing to have children, they're having them later. So all this is to say, that doesn't mean that you should allow your 20-something to just lounge around the house for the next several years and you pay for them. That's not the case. I'm just want to caution parents that there truly is a different timeline than when we grew up.
Yeah. Yep. Hands down, like preach. Thank you for saying that. We are dealing with a different generation of people that are responding differently to what society is normalizing. So, all right, last little bit, obviously, how do folks connect with you if they want to either link up with you for coaching or they want to get curious? How do they find you?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Kim Muench, Muench, parent coach on both of those platforms. And then I have a website that, of course, you can learn all about my coaching. It's reallifeparentguide.com.
Perfect. Well, I would normally say like, hey, give some like piece of advice, but I feel like this entire conversation has been like, I mean, literally, you have interwoven so many tips and, again, pieces of advice for parents that are listening based on your own personal story and then also based on just kind of the work that you're doing. So I think that's moot. I just want to drive people to connect with you. But I do want to thank you again for showing up, being a guest, sharing a part of your story, and then leaning into, obviously, the work that you do is necessary and it's going to continue to be necessary. So thank you for being in the trenches with parents right now.
Well, thank you for that appreciation and for the opportunity to talk to your audience.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.